Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being continued listeners of the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. Many of the episodes that we are currently releasing were pre-COVID-19, literally up to the week of, and they were scheduled to be rolled out over time. But with the COVID-19, we had a little lull, so some of these are even a little more or pre-COVID wall, so I would like to say. But I want to thank you. Make sure that you're maintaining social distancing and being safe, and be very conscious of yourself. This is the time you've been given where you can really just kind of find out who you are. At least that's how I'm doing it. That was one of the reasons for the slowdown and release of episodes. It's because I just took a step back. Anyway, you can always find the show at emmettmuckles.com or any podcast aggregator, or just search for The Billionaire Lifestyle with Emmett Muckles. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. This is your host, Emmett Muckles, as is in the title. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to really say something to you. We're in a dynamic, shifting time. Things are playing out that we are not used to, the things that we have not experienced ever. I asked my dad the other day, I was like, you ever experienced anything like this COVID-19? He says, not in my lifetime, and he's in his 70s. So here's what I would like for you guys, or I would advise, if we were friends sitting down, I would say, do this. Sit back and do nothing. Because everything we have we need is right there in front of us. We have food, we have shelter, we have water, and we have love, and those are the basic foundations that we should promote as a community. Now that I've got my whole spiel, and stay inside too. Today, my guest, we're going to talk about, some of the things that are kind of related to this, because we live in the United States in a capitalistic society, and that capitalistic society can sometimes get out of hand and actually put money over humans first, which is a thing unto itself. And today, my guest is David Schwerin. How you doing, David?
I'm doing great, thanks.
So let's get to a little bit of your backstory, because, you're a very conscious individual, especially when it comes to capitalism. So how did you come to your now?
Well, I started out quite a few years ago working in the finance industry and working for a bank, actually, in their investment department. And I was there for a number of years, about 7. And I decided I wanted to go out and start my own business, investment counseling, which I did. And so for the first part of my career, first 25 years, I guess, investments was my life, or at least part of my life. While I was working in the investment field, I became very interested in spiritual things. Began to do a lot of reading and studying of different spiritual paths, trying to understand really who I am and what's going on in the world. And so these two things were sort of side by side, finance and spirituality, which my understanding is not a common combination. But it led me in the direction that I finally needed to go. And I was advised, guided, I guess is the right term, to sell my business after I had been there for 25 years. And and really I wasn't told what was coming next. And it was a little bit frightening because I identified myself as a financial being, but I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
The last few years of my career, I was not happy with the short-sighted nature of investors and the selfish nature, honest with you. There was too much of, I'm only looking out for myself, and this is other people's response to me. I need to trade now. I need to get some commissions now. So short-sighted and selfish is the best way I can explain it. And that didn't make me comfortable. And so I was ready for a change, even though I wasn't ready to make the change. You know what I mean?
You're never ready. I mean,
no.
That's how life will push you. If you're resisted, life is going to push you in the direction you need to go. And if you're resisted, you're just going to have a tough time.
Absolutely. And that describes me exactly. I was resisting making the change. Although I had enough experiences in the spiritual realm to know that it probably was right, but it still was a hard step to take. And eventually I did. Within a relatively short period of time, I just sold my business. And it was not too long after that I was guided to write my first book. Again, I had no idea that I was supposed to write a book or what the topic was, or very, very little of anything about it. But I started to think about it, and I decided to combine what I had studied in the spiritual realm with what was going on in the business world. And I had studied a spiritual path that had specific steps along the way. And so I decided to incorporate that into a business framework and show how if you follow these steps in business will become not only more successful, but more fulfilling. And so the book, which was published in 1998, is called Conscious Capitalism, which it combined spiritual ideas with business ideas. And 1998 was an eventful year for me.
For quite a few people, it was.
Yeah, okay. So besides publication of my book, I had been given some guidance to learn how to channel. I'm not sure whether you know what channeling is, but
for those who might not know, can you explain what you mean by channeling?
Okay. Well, channeling is receiving information from higher, more wise realms, you might say, and bringing that information through and being able to explain it to others and let the information, whatever that information is, come through from beings that are wiser than I.
Okay.
And so it's a process anybody can do. It just takes practice, like any other skill. And so I started in 1998 to try and master that skill. And to be honest with you, it's a lifelong thing. It takes a long time to do, and so I'm not an expert, but it has opened up some things to me that didn't otherwise have been open.
So with you made this shift, and you've kind of become a new person. They always say every 7 years we're kind of reborn, and I always look at those markers, especially after I hit like 42. And I actually saw these moments where your life shifted. You went in another direction.
Right.
But concerning, what are some of the basic principles regarding this planet and what's going on?
Okay.
With our capitalistic society? And, we come out of the 80s. You probably remember Gordon Gekko, greed is good.
Right.
And greed is also
out of the Michael Milken era too.
Yeah, greed is also one of the 7 deadly sins. So we have this diaspora here of promoting these things. So what do you think is going on with the planet, especially with what we're seeing recently?
All right. Well, that's a great question because a lot of people are confused and upset. And what's happening, and this is based on, again, guidance that I've received. This is a wake-up call. It's a crisis that is needed at this time. Get people to take a step back, look at their life, try to understand themselves better and what's going on, and change some of their beliefs and ideas, because some of our thinking has led us to this point and created what is now happening. And specifically, in the social realm, inequality has gotten out of hand, expanded to the point where it's unsustainable. In the environmental realm, we have ignored the environment too much. We deny climate change. We look at resources as something that are ours and don't have to be nurtured and taken care of. And in the financial realm, we go into debt and create deficits without even thinking about what we're doing or how we're going to pay it back.
Yeah.
And all those things have to be addressed and have to be looked at. And if there wasn't something that forced us to pay attention to them, like what's happening now, we'd go on and it would get worse until it exploded, because all three of those things are unsustainable. And if something's unsustainable, that means it has to end. And so what's happening now is we're being forced to look at things, what we've created. Nobody else created them. We did it. Right? See, our technological advances have outstripped our spiritual understanding.
Yes, they have. That is absolutely true.
And that's not when we understand who we are and what we're here for, it's not to make the biggest boat or the biggest house or go on the longest trip. It's to understand ourselves and to focus on what's important. Our values and priorities have to change, and so that's what's happening as I see it.
I was wondering about this, and I said, this is fundamentally what we're experiencing with the COVID-19 and the social distancing. It's actually, nothing will be the same after this, because it's almost like, I said to my wife, I was like, this is like an episode of Black Mirror. Like, you would not believe that this would occur, not only in the United States, but globally. Everybody would have to adhere to like the same practices, which is scary in some sense because it can be used for nefarious methods, or it can help us to prosper. But what can we really, if you were to give us a glimpse of the future of where we should be, what would that look like? What can we do about it?
Well, it would be to address the problems that we've created. Inequality. That just can't continue the way it is. People who are downtrodden and out of luck are not going to continue to accept the situation as it is now.
Yeah.
So we have to address that. We have to address the environmental. So we have to change our focus, our priorities, and make environment a highest priority rather than a lowest. And we have to stop worrying about, I want what I want and I want it now. That's the mentality.
That is the mentality.
And that's childish. And we have to grow up. And we have to realize that if we want, we're entitled to want anything we want, but we have to save for it, not go out and borrow for it, save for it.
But America was built on this fiat. Well, it wasn't built. It was built on something of substance. Just, back in the 16, 17, 1800s, everything was about gold. It was like, if you had this amount of gold, that was your wealth. If your country had this much gold, that's what you represented. And then it was supplemented by your goods and services. Then we got rid of the gold standard. And so now you can print money at whim. Because I remember this. I asked my dad, I was like, how much did my grandma's house cost? He was like, it was some crazy amount of money, like $13,000 back in like late 50s, early 60s. That house today is like $400,000, which is unheard of, which means it could, A, generate wealth for a family, but B, the members of the family probably couldn't take care of it because the taxes would be so high. So it's a double-edged sword. And I've always wondered, how could we have continual growth and continual inflation? Because in the next lifetime, if I was to double my lifetime, a can of Coke would cost like $30.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we're running in place. We're seeing values go up, but we're not seeing the worth of that value keep up with it. So it's a false economy, false belief that first of all, we believe, and we're constantly told by the government as well as others, got to grow out of this. We got to grow. We got to, growth is misunderstood. Growth has its place, but it's not the end all and be all, because as you just perfectly illustrated, a value of something goes from 13 to 400,000. That's a lot of growth, but where is the person at the end? They can't afford to maintain it, and it's not really worth it a lot more if you deflate it for on inflation adjusted basis. The rise in value is really much less than you might think, and with most things, if you deflate them and make them adjust them for inflation, it's just funny money. It's not real. And besides that, the key point though is if making money and accumulating wealth is the objective, then maybe we've done okay. But that's really not why we're here. No. That's not what our purpose is. And it's understand ourselves, understand our beliefs. Are they real? Are our beliefs something that we is accurate? Excuse me. We'll turn this off. So we have to look at our beliefs. Is growth the be all and end all? Is what's the value of life? Am I giving back? Am I contributing to life, or am I taking from life? And the way the universe works is that if you give back, you're filled up again. If you constantly taking, you're depleting what you have. So, that's my view.
Yeah, I was just wondering about.
But I didn't get into it. It's based on a lot of spiritual understanding and mentoring. Over the last 22 years, I have been really blessed to have received a lot of help. And so what I'm telling you is, I believe, quite accurate. And it's all in my book, Mill Your Soul, Bring Joy to Your Life. That helps you understand who you are, what you're here for, and help you then to figure out what's a value and where should my priorities be. Because we don't know.
We don't. And it's growing because I was, I teach a lot of younger individuals, people who are in their early 20s, just starting out. And I started to see something. These individuals were not coming to the table with knowledge. And what I mean by that is they were not coming to the table with life knowledge because their parents hadn't imparted it upon them, or they had rejected what their parents were saying because society told them to reject, that they didn't need to know what their history was. And I mean their immediate history. What music did your parents listen to? What were they going through? And the reason I know this is because my daughter, my youngest daughter, she put an item up on Facebook. It was a song that I used to listen to. And she literally listed out these songs. She was like, these are the songs I heard when I grew up. And her friends were like, what are those? And she was like, my dad would play this music, and these are the songs of my childhood. And I was like, you don't hear that, because my parents used to sit down. They used to sit down in a group. We would be on the outside. And the adults would talk, but they would have the kids nearby, but they would be reminiscing about what they went through in their lifetime and how they dealt with stuff. So we had a running history, and we knew what our context was. I don't think we have that anymore. And this is going to lead me into another question. I see this all the time on social media. These people promoting these products that say, hey, I can get you to 6 figures, become a millionaire. And it's all just to get some money and attention without a lot of value. How can you even manage 6 figures if you can't manage 4 or 3? And we're not talking about that. So what is the connection between like this business of that we know of from like the 20th and 19th century and spirituality that is changing? Because I see it changing with the advent of the new millennium. That I start to see that things change, and I'm seeing them continually with the this new age we're in. So what is that connection between modern business and spirituality, what it should be?
Well, I guess I would answer that by saying, do we know who we are and what our beliefs are? We have some beliefs, what's important, what I should be doing, who I am, how I fit into the bigger picture. And we have to look at those and say, are they actually accurate? Because most of the times we've been conditioned to believe certain things without really looking at them and analyzing. And as you learn more about who you really are and what your purpose is, your values will change. Your focus will change. And the objective is to feel fulfilled, to feel good about yourself. And most people don't. Most people are scurrying around and not sure what they're doing, and they're unhappy with their work situation. And so what's happening now is really a wake-up call, as I said at the beginning. It's to help us to, all right, let me step back and see, is things going the way I want? What if I change this? Or what if I look at things differently? Are my beliefs really in alignment with reality? And it takes some introspection. And most of us don't do that. Most of us are just looking at the outside and trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
And that's not what the right place. And so that's what's happening today to help us to focus on what's important.
There's this ideology that after this pandemic that we're experiencing goes away, either people are going to be like, yay, it's done. They're going to just go back to their social norms that they had, or they're just going to party like for a good 2 weeks and then go back, or the opposite, which is a slow reintegration into society at large and become anew. What do you think we need to find this economic stability that is sustainable?
Well, let me just answer one question that you just brought up first, and that is, this thing is not going to be over so quickly. They're going to be partying in a couple of weeks or a couple of months even. This is going to change our society for a long time. It's going to help bring us together because we realize we're all in this together. We can't do this by ourselves.
Yeah.
It's really a small world. We're all interdependent. So that's a first realization. And we have to treat people differently. If we're all interdependent and yet I'm taking 3/4 of the resources, that makes no sense. So that's the first part of the answer. Give me the question again, the second part, please.
So I was wondering how, after all this, how do we go back to economic stability, but responsibly.
Okay. I'm sort of repeating myself, but it's important to be repeated. And that is, we've got to answer the problems we've created. We have to pay attention to them and focus on them and put resources in. Instead of spending money on defense, as an example, we have to do it on making sure that there are not haves and have-nots. We have to look at how we're distributing the resources that we're creating, and we have to focus on the lifeblood of all of us, which is the Mother Earth.
Yeah.
We can't ignore her. We can't say, I don't want to change anything I'm doing to reduce the climate change problem because it'll affect my livelihood. Well, it might temporarily affect your livelihood, but there's going to have to be some sacrifices because we've ignored it too long.
Yeah.
And so all these things are going to require some sacrifices, and that's why we're being hit over the head, not so gently, to say, stop the way you're doing things. It doesn't work. Yeah. It's not sustainable.
I was wondering, up until recently, I had this question in my head because I grew up in Catholic schools and I read the Bible and I couldn't for the life of me, until recently, it just kind of hit me in the head, why humans were always referred to as sheep. Until recently, then it hit me. I was like, oh my God, there are some non-free thinking or critical thinking human beings who follow whatever is visualized or said. These mediums that we have today are perfect for television programming, radio programming, the masses, because I'm seeing it and it's just so bizarre. But that just worries me. Do we have to have a leader that brings people together versus people coming together as collective societies for business, for social, for sustainability, and saying, oh, we are a small group and they're doing basically the same stuff, slightly different, but it's the same thing. Let it be. So let me ask you, where can people find your information?
Well, my website is called consciousthinking.com, CONSCIOUS, thinking, THINKING, consciousthinking.com. My latest book, Know Your Soul, Bring Joy to Your Life, it's on Amazon, and there's reviews and other background information there. And my co-author has a website. Her name is Diana Munz Chen, DianaMunzChen.com. And she has material also on it about various things, including the Know Your Soul book.
So how many books do you have? Because there's Conscious Capitalism.
That was my first book.
Okay. And then how many have you written?
3.
Okay, 3.
Conscious Capitalism, then Conscious Globalism, and then my most recent one, which is Know Your Soul, Bring Joy to Your Life. And they've all helped me as I've written them. They've helped me to understand and learn, and I think they would help others. But I think that the most recent one is the most significant. You mentioned you brought up in Catholic school, and this really has nothing to do with religion, although most people think it does. The Know Your Soul book was written at the direction and oversight of Archangel Michael, which people relate to as a religious figure, but in my view, he is not. He's a spiritual figure. And so there's a lot of good wisdom in it that helps you to understand who you are and what you're here for. That's really the crux of life, you don't know that, you're going to go in the wrong direction or have values and priorities that are not in alignment with reality. And you won't feel fulfilled. You might have a lot of money, but you won't feel good about yourself.
Yeah. That's one of the things I was thinking about, incarnation. So, and I always say to people on this show, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Exactly.
And over the last 2 weeks, I've had a lot of time to think. It's not a lot to do.
We all.
And, it kind of came to me like we were this all connected spiritual thing. And then someone said, we're going to give you this experience. We're going to put you in this meat bag, and then we're going to amplify your ego. And we're like, what's an ego? You'll figure it out. Boom, you're done. And then you're like, I got this ego that keeps telling me to do things, and I don't feel weird. It makes me feel great. And, a lot of things come down to our ego. That's what causes our separation, because in my mind, I really saw this when I went to Europe. Because in America, we have this pre-programmed single program of separation. And then I went to Europe, and I went to these kind of monoculture countries. And then I actually saw nationalism. I was like, oh, that's not bad. That's different than what I see in the United States, what nationalism is. Nationalism here is more about myself versus my community. And there's a lot of stuff for us to learn. There's just so much for us to learn, but we have to be open to it. Are there any places that you're speaking? Do you give any webinars, any talks?
I've given a number of talks, a number of universities, and I'm open to doing that. I like to do that, and I think there's an important message in what's happening today that needs to be understood. And there's nothing that I have. I had 2 presentations upcoming, both of which were canceled because of flight problems. So right now I'm just at home, and that's why podcasts are so attractive, because you don't have to go anywhere. And hopefully I'm reaching an audience that is open to new ideas and new ways of thinking. And that's what is being called for today.
Awesome. Well, David, I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. If there's one message that you could give the audience in the world, what would that be?
Well, it's rather simplistic, but we're all in this together. We're all connected. We're all interdependent. And we have to start thinking that way, because right now we're too much in a silo, too separate. And that's what's causing our problem.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's one thing you really have to do is you have to take care of yourself, but be conscious of your community. That means the things that you do affect others. So with that, it's time to get back to the basics. Just sit and be. This is one of the hardest things for humans to do, is just literally do a Forrest Gump. You ever see that thing where Forrest Gump was just sitting on the bench, minding his business, watching the world go by, and he had a box of chocolates in his lap? He was waiting for a bus, but he didn't have to have a phone. He just sat there, and he listened to the birds. He felt the wind. He saw the light that was coming into his eyes, and felt the people that were around him. He was a human being. That's what I asked you to do. Till next time, love you all. Peace.